Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am Roseanne Skamahorn. I'm the Associate Director for the Southern Rural Development Center here at Mississippi State University. Let's go ahead and make sure we're recording. Good deal. All right. Today we have the honor to host week three on key players in succession, who should be involved. This is the third part of the class of Who Will Fill My Shoes? Succession planning for landowners, farmers, forest owners, and family businesses. Just a little disclaimer, this material is based upon the work supported by the National Institute of Food and Agriculture and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this publication and presentation are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the view of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. This webinar will be recorded and posted on the Southern Rural Development Center's website, along with the PowerPoints and any handouts that the presenters share today. Please feel free to ask any questions using the chat feature on your screen. The presenters will address them verbally at the end of the workshop, but as we go through, they'll also be answering your questions in that chat box. So without further ado, today's presenters are Dr. Rebecca Smith. She's Associate Extension Professor here at Mississippi State University Extension, and Renee Wyatt. She's the Research and Extension Specialist at the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development, as well as the Family Business Management Specialist at Purdue Institute for Family Businesses. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our authors and our presenters today.
Thank you, Roseanne. And hello, everybody. It is great to have you back for our third session. We really appreciate your attendance and support. Today, we're going to be talking about getting your team together for the succession planning. So key players in succession, who should be involved? I'm going to start us off with the boilerplate stuff, and then Renee is going to take over to do some of the meat and potatoes, and then I will do the tail end of it. So our partnering organizations, North Central Regional Center for Rural Development, as well as the Southern Rural Development Center, North Carolina State University, Purdue's University Institute for Family Business, and Mississippi State University Extension Department of Ag Economics. And succession planning. So again, we're coming together. Our curriculum is to help extension and community educators train in their area. It's a train the trainer. Also to help families be able to make progress in their succession planning. And we know that that process, it encompasses a lot. It's multidimensional. It's not just financial, but also emotional. And in addition to having a business, we've got family members that are overlapping. So there's a lot of different dynamics. So making decisions and moving forward can be difficult. And so this curriculum has been put together to help you to move forward. And it's helping other families across the nation be able to do that. And we're focusing on not just the hard skills, but also soft skills as we continue to understand that the dimensions of decision making, as we honor all of our voices in the process, takes time. So Renee Wyatt, who's been introduced already, is an author and presenter today, and Kurt Smith from North Carolina State, who's not on today, but has been the other two modules. So we will miss him today. And then I am Becky Smith. This is the slide where you will put your information when you are doing this presentation in your hat as an extension or community educator. So before we begin, just a reminder. So this is another disclaimer, general information. on succession planning that we know impacts most families. So it may not be applicable to every state or location, because there are things that change in the different places. So we're going to talk today about the importance of building your team. So that is really, really relevant. But these do not provide legal advice. What we are trying to do is to help you get prepared, to be well prepared to go talk to an attorney, for example, as well as your other professionals, so that you can make more progress quickly and save yourself some time and money. And when we get together, it is important to let your audience know that while personal stories are really important and really relevant and why they're in the room, um, they also need to be protected. So general questions are welcome, but personal questions need to be saved to outside of the group setting. So if you think that is something that is general and other people are going to have, then please ask the question. Other than that, then setting up some time outside of the presentation makes sense. So before we begin, again, let's go. We've got some terms, making sure that we're all on the same page. Sometimes succession planning and estate planning mean different things to different people. And this is how we're using these terms in this curriculum. So when we talk about succession planning, what we mean is the plan for the transfer of management or ownership during the life of the owners. And the estate planning is the plan for the transfer of the personal assets and property that will transition after the owner has passed. So hopefully that helps. And whoops. Too much. Yeah, successor is going to be the junior generation, and the incumbent is going to be the senior generation, the one that's transferring. Businesses, and land, we define very broadly. So think about businesses where they're not just forestry or just ag, but all kinds of land and all different types of entities as businesses. So today is officially module 2, because we did module 2 and 3 in different order, but we're going to talk about who's involved in making decisions and who gets a vote, and what advisors, what might we need, and we'll have plenty of time today for questions. So Renee, if you will take the ball.
Perfect. Thanks, Becky. Yeah, so when we think about who's involved in your farm business or your land or your family, it can get really complicated. I know we had one of our first sessions was on conflict and communication. It can all be so muddled when you're trying to say, okay, who decides what, who's in what conversation? I know I get a question a lot of times, who needs to be at this table? Who should be involved in this decision? And it really varies family to family or business to business. But we have some tools and resources for you today that can help you think through that process and kind of determine, okay, if we're just thinking about a general business or a general family, where should these people be? When should they have a say? And you can feel empowered to move forward with your succession plan, feeling a little bit more confident in the decisions you're making as to who involved and when. So this is the 3-circle family business model. As we know, if we're in a family business, which most 99% of farms are family businesses. So if you're on a farm, you're probably in a family business. We have these different circles that we can fall in. Some people are just family. They don't want to be involved in the business part at all, right? They're not an owner. They don't help with day-to-day management. They're just part of the family. That's fine. Some people are just in ownership. They might not be related. Maybe you have some unrelated owners in the business. They just hold shares or something like that, but they're not involved in the day-to-day management of the business. They could fall up here in the ownership part. And then you have the business part. And then, of course, we have all these intersections, right? So the current owner, incumbent, manager of the business probably falls in here, right? They're an owner, they're part of the family, and they're part of the business. So when they're making decisions, they have all these different viewpoints that they're constantly considering when they're making decisions, whether or not they're thinking about it like that. But they have to consider all these different things, all these different people. And, as we go through time, people can move from place to place in these different circles and overlaps. And so what we have for you is a handout that you can use. And we find this really, really helpful, just talking through with farms, families, businesses as to who all is involved right now and where are they. It can really help you to decide their point of view and help see where they're coming from when somebody brings up an issue. So what we have people do and what we'll have people do on this handout is to, map out your family farm, business right now as it is today. Because a lot of times if you say to someone, who's involved in your family business, who's involved in your farm, they'll just name off a couple people. And you'll say, okay, well, who owns shares? And then there's another list of people. And you'll say, okay, and who are your employees? And they'll name another list of people. Okay, and who has some kind of vested interest in seeing your farm or your family business or your land succeed? There's another list of people. And so this really helps you put that pen to paper and get a good list going. And so what we'll have people do at this handout is to list where people are now. So kind of fill that out. You can draw lines if you need to. And then there's another set of this diagram on the next page. And so you choose 5 to 10 years, however many years in the future, and start thinking about how are those people going to move from this circle to this circle. Maybe they go from being just family to maybe they're in the family and the business, or maybe they become an owner. So how are those people going to change over time? And how can we think about that when we're thinking about succession and when to implement those people in the different decisions that we're making? So we have another handout that really helps you think through more of the management side and, these annual or recurring activities that you have. A lot of times when we're talking to farms and family businesses and extension, we really encourage them to write down job descriptions for everyone in the business. I know a lot of farms, roll their eyes at that. They're like, "Ugh, we're a small farm or we're a family farm. We don't need those, right? We don't need job descriptions." But it's really good to have those in place, especially on the contingency planning side of things, so you kind of know what everyone does. But here we have this worksheet that you can fill out. The first part there is just annual or recurring activities. So what kind of activities does your farm business, does your property, does your family do? For example, we have maintain roads. Who does that? When does it happen? And any notes, maybe contact information for somebody who helps you with that. Next, we have permits, leases, and agreements. So, who do you do business with? Who are your tenants? Who do you rent land from? Who do you get insurance from? You can put all kinds of things here. Who do you work with? You can list that here. And then also management of the property. So we have an example here as a forestry consultant. Maybe you work with soil and water. Maybe you work with FSA. You can put all kinds of things in here for the management of that property. And we can think through that and who's involved. And we can list that here. So we have a good inventory of who's involved on the management structure side of your business. So next we're going to talk about who gets a vote. I know this is a really hard question. We get a question quite a bit, are in-laws involved? Who's involved? Who's at the table? Who needs to hear this information? I like to err on the side of caution and, if in the in-laws example, at least, I like to have the in-laws in the room so they're hearing the same information. It doesn't mean you have to give them a vote, but they like to hear the information too and get it firsthand. But we'll go into some of that, who gets a vote and who's involved in what stage of the succession process. Okay, so here we're just going to start with a list of who could be involved. Oh, sorry about that. I think I'm like, there we go. So who's involved in the land or the business, the farm? So first we have the owner or owners. You can have multiple owners, you can have a single owner. It just depends on how the business or land is structured. Those are typically the incumbents. They're the one that hold the power, hold the assets for the most part. Next, we have actively participating heirs or successors. So they're likely active in the management of the land or the business. They might be working for the business, doing maintenance on the land, whatever that entails. You can also have these non-active heirs. So they could still be successors. They could still inherit something at some point, but maybe they're not, active in the management of the property or the business. You also have tangentially related family members. So they're related to the business or the family land or whatever that is, but they won't necessarily inherit it or management. And this group can really vary family to family. It can be long lost cousins who just love the family land, and that's great, but they might not be involved in managing it, right? They might not inherit shares or whatever that looks like. And then you have unrelated business members. So these are employees, tenants, these other people who are stakeholders in the land or business, but they're not related to the family. So when we think about, who has the power to make decisions in these different succession scenarios, we're going to start with the owner or the owners. So these are the incumbents, as I said. They typically, if you're thinking about the owners, they typically hold almost all of the financial power, right? They have the control of the assets. They own the assets. They're probably making most of the decisions, if not all of the decisions. They really have control over the property, the business, the land, whatever we're talking about here. And when we relate that to the succession process, these incumbents, these owners, they really should be the ones who initiate those succession discussions. They're the ones who need to bring an opportunity to the table for the next generation. It's a lot harder when you don't have those assets to come to the people who do have assets and say, hey, I want a piece, right? It's not as comfortable and it's not as welcoming. So what we really want ideally is for those owners or incumbents to be the one who start that decision, start that process, and they realize that new management or ownership, even co-management or co-ownership, and invite that next generation in. So that's really what we want to encourage that owner incumbent generation to do. And next we have successors. So they could be both on farm or off farm, like I talked about earlier. But what power do they have? What decisions? They really hold the power of continuity. So what do we mean by that? So continuity, they can really decide the future of the farm and its potential. So almost all of the farmers that I talk to, almost all the business owners that I talk to, they want their family, their kids, their grandkids, even nieces and nephews, maybe they don't have kids or maybe their kids don't want to be involved, but they want that business to go to family. So the power of continuity is really, really in the hands of those successors. They can really be involved and make sure that the business or the farm or the property lasts in the family to the next generation, and then they can pass it on as well. Next, we have farm employees and non-immediate family members. So they may or may not feel as though they're entitled to a say in the process. You can probably envision some of these people if you're from a farm or a family. Some people feel like they have a say and really don't. Some people don't feel like they have a say and maybe do. But you can think about all these people. But the farm employees and the non-immediate family members, they really don't have a lot of power to make decisions in this succession process. But they can still be considered. And we'll go through that here in the next slides too. So we have this table, it's on this slide and our next slide, and we're really going to talk about, how to determine who is involved. So I've touched on this a couple times now, just to reiterate though, this owner or incumbent group, they're in the ideal position to initiate those discussions about succession. They're really involved in every aspect of the process. They likely hold the deeds. They know the financials. They know who the past owners were. They have an idea, even if they haven't discussed it with their family, they have an idea of where they want to see that property or that business go in the future, right? They really hold the power in the succession process. So, do you think they get a vote? Absolutely, they get a vote. They get a vote on everything, right? They hold all of the assets, they hold most of the control. They absolutely get a vote in the succession process. So when we're thinking about on-farm heirs, those are the heirs that are involved. Maybe they haven't taken over ownership yet, but they're involved in the business currently or the land currently. So they're doing some management, they're doing some of the processes that are needed to upkeep the business or the land. So they're involved in a lot of aspects of the process. Their input should really be considered closely to make sure that succession is successful or that succession is achieved. That takes a lot from that owner generation. Start asking, what are your intentions? How would you like to be involved? Where do you see the farm going? Where do you see the business going? How can we bring you in? Asking all of those questions that are sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes hard to grapple with, but it can really make the succession process very, very successful. So when we're thinking about whether they get a vote, they get a vote too. This group should get a vote on most aspects, especially, they're the next generation taking over. Do they necessarily get to vote on, how money is spent? Not yet. Maybe they're not an owner yet, but they need to be involved in these decision-making processes. And when we're drafting up documents, for our succession process, when we're looking at how things are going to be divided, they should be able to have a vote in that. They might not have the final vote, but their input should be considered in the process. And the next three groups that we have to talk about are a little bit muddier when we're thinking about if they're involved and if they get a vote and how to incorporate them in the succession process. So first we have off-farm heirs. So these off-farm heirs, they're not involved in the day-to-day management of the business or the property. They're potential successors. They don't always have to be. But if we say heirs, they're probably going to inherit something. So they might be involved in ownership-related topics if they're going to inherit some assets such as land, maybe shares of a corporation, depending on how that property or that business is structured. This really gets us into those fair versus equal discussions. Those are really hard when we have on-farm heirs and off-farm heirs. That inheritance is not always symmetrical. What is fair to the on-farm heir is not always fair to the off-farm heir, and they don't always see eye to eye on that. I think that the real way to get through that fair versus equal debate, though, is having everyone talk about it and get the same information and give that owner incumbent generation time to explain why things are being divided the way they are and why decisions are being made the way they are. So this group, these off-farm heirs, they may feel like they should have more of a vote than what's practical. And we see that sometimes too. Sometimes people inherit, tenants in common. Say there's 4 siblings, they inherit all together. 2 are on the farm, 2 are off the farm. Depending on the legal structure and where they are, if one of those heirs decides to sell, that can trigger a sale of the whole property. So we have to think about these things and how we structure things, who gets a vote and who gets a say. Now, when we're thinking about those off-farm heirs, do they get a vote? Sometimes. It just depends, right? If they will eventually be owners, then they can vote on some aspects of the farm that could affect them, right? If they're off-farm heirs and they own, parcel A and they're not owners on parcel B and C, should they have vote on, parcel B and C, even though it's family land? They probably shouldn't, right? They might feel as though they should, but if they're not owners or going to inherit that, they probably shouldn't have a vote on that property. So the next group we're going to talk about is that tangentially related family members. So they're family, they're related, but they won't inherit or manage the farm or business or the land. So they most likely have a very high interest in seeing the farm succeed, but they won't be financially involved. These are the cousins. They're like, oh, I remember growing up and going to grandma and grandpa's farm. I love that farm. I love that red barn. I want to take my wedding pictures in front of that red barn, maybe, right? So they have this interest. They love the legacy side of the farm family business. They're really interested in making sure that legacy continues. Once again, they may feel as though they have a say. If they're not going to inherit or manage, though, they probably don't get a vote. But as a tangent to that, they probably would appreciate being informed about what's going on. Whether they're just really nosy or they just want to know, they have their heart in that land. They want to know what's going to happen to it. And that's okay. We sometimes, I think, mistake people caring for people being nosy. And so I'll just caution you to, take it as them caring and wanting to see things succeed versus being nosy. And lastly, we have this group that's unrelated business members. So these are employees, tenants. These people, once again, they're not going to own likely, but they have a financial interest in seeing the succession process succeed, right? They might have employment, contracts, their land access might hinge on the farm continuing to the next generation. So they really want to see this farm go through to the next generation and them still have access to that land or contract or employment. So when we think about them getting a vote, once again, no, they don't really have a vote, but they probably would like to be involved or they would appreciate being informed on what's going on, right? So if you're thinking about passing the business down to that next generation, you probably want to take some time to talk with a tenant about, this is going to be the next farmer, right? This is who's taking over for me, and this is how they're going to be involved. Let's start that business relationship early and, keep that communication open. And so what we have kind of to wrap up all of this information is a handout that you can use to have participants really think through who is involved in their current farm, family business, property, land. So we have the owner, the on-farm heirs, the off-farm heirs, tangentially related family members, and unrelated family members. And we can list who is in the category. Do they currently get a vote? So you can think about right now, do they get a vote? And then should they? So you can change this, right? You can say, okay, after going through this information, maybe they should get a little bit more of a vote. Maybe they shouldn't get a vote. Maybe my actions are being influenced by their say, even though they shouldn't be. What do we owe that group? It really helps you to think through who is involved and to what extent they should be involved. And with that, I will hand it back over to Becky.
Right, Renee, before I get started, I thought maybe you might talk a little bit about what does it mean when you say get a vote? Like, are we talking about some official in the annual business meeting vote, or like vote as in informal, having voice? Could you maybe talk a little bit about how you've seen that in action?
Sure. Yeah. So I think that, if you have a legal structure, that will kind of tell you whether or not certain people do get a vote based on their ownership, based on their shares, based on, voting and non-voting shares. So what I was really talking about was whether they really have an influence to determine how the succession process works. So they might be able to voice their opinion, right? So everybody is entitled to voice their opinion no matter what, right? Freedom of speech, that's great. But should their opinion influence what I do as an owner and how I make my decisions? That's what I'm really talking about, is whether or not they get to guide how that succession process goes and, what decisions are made. Thank you for that, Becky.
Good deal. All right, so let's talk about the team of advisors that you are likely to want to have that will have your back. So obviously the succession plan can be fairly complex, lots of different dimensions and different decisions to make. And the way that this is works, like ideally, to have this team approach where everything is in coordinated and in sync, so that the advisors are all on the same page as the family and family business. And that way, if you get them on the same page sooner rather than later, then that saves the family and the business significant time and then financial resources. So if we can figure out how to make this team work in concert so that things are coordinated, and that that all of the advisors understand the different obstacles and the different ways that this particular operation runs, then it'd be better in the long run. So using advisors is sometimes people really want to avoid them because it's costly. And while that is costly in one dimension, I want to put it out there that these advisors are there to help really save money, keeping you out of making some big mistakes, or even in your financial advisors to help you make more money than you could. So just wanted to kind of put that bigger perspective out there. They have seen other experts, and our advisors have seen others in certain situations and will be able to help you navigate better than being, blind and not having. They will have the benefit of those patterns and to be able to avoid them. So you'll want your attorney because you'll need the legal advice, a CPA for financial advice, for taxes, certified financial planners to help individuals in the family and in the business with their own retirement, your insurance agent, lenders, making sure that there is not too much debt taken on. A mediator can be golden, especially when there's been some strife or turmoil. Mediators can be this third party that can help keep the process and everybody looking at the goal instead of getting trapped into the heartache that can come up. So, and we don't have there are mediators that can help, ag mediators. There's a whole program that can help with that. So probably need to get that link out there. And then you've got support as well. So like navigators are going to help you hold your hand through the process. So possibly an extension educator, a local extension educator may have the skills to be able to do this. There are management consultants, respected peers, the process, whoever it is, needs to be unbiased and have the best interest of the firm and family at heart, though. So your personal advisors are going to be your executor. I've had people say about executor before. Executor or personal representative, depending upon where you are or what your process is, and trustee. So making sure that wishes are carried out. You do want to make sure that this is not an insignificant job. So you do want to make sure that the person that you choose for this role is up to it and understands that it will take a detail, it will take follow through as well. And this curriculum is full of bells and whistles. And so we have a handout as well for your team of advisors. So again, trying to help you keep all of your information organized so that you can spend more of your time going forward and not having to waste time trying to track things down. But some questions that you can think about to be able to prepare as you are selecting your advisors. So selecting those advisors is an important part. The advice that we've got is going to be crucial. So you want to make sure that you're getting the best advice that you can, and that's going to take doing some due diligence on your part. So think of it as like hiring an employee for the business. Think about developing that job description for each of the advisor roles so that you're very clear in what that advisor will be doing, and then you can be communicating that with the advisor, and so you're on the same page. Again, saving heartache down the road. And as you are interviewing potential members, you want to think about how do we get them. So like any other process of how to find something, how to buy something, especially something big, asking a friend or other farmers for for their experiences, other professionals. So you may have some of your team together, and maybe your attorney works well with the CPA or with this mortgage lender, that kind of thing. You might find a referral service to help you figure out who can fill up your team. And the magic number of 3 is such that we find that if you interview 3, that's pretty much optimal. Less than 3, you might not have done enough. And more than 3 typically is just extra time spent, but the additional benefit isn't worth it. But typically that 3 is about what you want to shoot for. And after you start doing those interviews of up to about 3, then you start being able to hear some of the same things, and you'll know, okay, then this is it'll be clearer for you to which direction to go in. So some questions that you can think about asking as you're interviewing: what's your experience in similar situations? Are there references? Are there somebody else that you've helped that could maybe provide a reference for yourself? How long have you been working in this field? Are they trained properly? How long is it likely to take? Do you have other examples or plans that you can use with other people that we could use? A fee. It's really important to be able to talk about the fee structure. Less surprises is better. Okay, so in this case, all of these questions we got to get language around so that we can reduce surprises. And then you want to ask your own self, are you comfortable working, with this person? Would your family be comfortable working with them when you're gone? So that's our presentation for today, and we've got plenty of time for some questions. So let's check the chat. All right, Wanda's on as an ag mediator. Excellent. And okay, excellent, good deal. And Lindsay as well, so perfect. I don't see any other questions other than like logistical questions. Do we have any questions now?
You can feel free to unmute and ask directly, or you can type it in the chat and we'll read it off for you.
This is Ken Smith. I'm from Dallas, and part of a family farm, about 75 miles away, in a little small town. We have multiple owners, but we don't have an entity. We're not a legal entity at this point. Is there some suggestions that you might be able to forward to us on how to set up an entity so that we can conduct business and can go after loans? Right now it's not I forget the word. Everyone owns all parts of the share. It's not broken down in different sections. So everyone has ownership of part of the whole thing, not a four corners type of thing.
So Ken, what you're saying is, what I'm hearing you say is that it's held as heirs property?
It's heirs property.
Yeah, held as heirs property. So we did talk about the different possibilities of legal structure last time in our module, so you want to go back and grab that.
Okay.
But basically you're going to need to get to an attorney that does this stuff. That's really, really important, not just any attorney, because then that attorney is going to be able to figure out what your goals are, what the goals are, and what the possibilities of your situation are. And then you will be able to figure out what kind of entity. So that's really, so at this point, you can inform yourself and learn about the different types of entities, which you can do with what, like the recording from last week. But until you talk to an attorney, you're not going to be able really to, I would just, I don't go in with, oh, we need to establish this,
Mhm.
because you might have some broader thing that you're not really seeing. So
Mhm.
kind of go in with an open mind. As long as you get a good attorney that has experience in heirs property, then that's the direction that you want to go. And we have other resources as well on heirs property in general, and including the heirs property legal network, so we can connect you to that.
Okay. Just my follow-up question, and I'll be quiet, is how do we look at the notes or summaries from last week's meeting? What is the website? And we'll go hunt for it.
Awesome. Roseanne sends out the links after every
Okay.
thing. So Roseanne, do they sign up at the beginning or do they sign up individually? Does everybody get access to all of them? I guess is the question.
Everybody gets, after each session, Carmen goes through and edits our video for us to make sure it's all nice, clean, and tidy. That takes us a few days to get the actual video link submitted onto the website. But I will email you tomorrow morning, and along with everybody on this call today, and it will have a link to a private website that is only open to those of us who have attended these sessions. And it
Okay.
will, every week we update it with the handouts, the guidebooks, the PowerPoint slides, and the video. So look for that email from me, everybody. That'll come out tomorrow morning for y'all. If you've attended a previous session, it's the exact same link that I sent to you last week.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
All
it.
right, great
You're most
question,
welcome, Ken.
Ken.
And it looked like Ben had his hand up. Does Ben, do you want to speak up? And then I've got Carla next.
Yes, and just tell me if this is too much of a personal question, but we're right now reviewing personal business management versus corporate business management. I think this is me, the successor, thinking that the business management allows us to hit all those different classes of users by splitting things between salaries and dividends that are paid out at the end of the year based off profitability for the corporation. And there's also a lot of other tax benefits on that angle of it. But I guess, did you have any general advice in that realm of personal versus corporate management?
Yeah, I really don't. That's more legal advice. And based on my position, I'm not an attorney, so I can't answer that, to be honest. I would speak to an attorney or a CPA or somebody who's trained in that. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, Ben,
Okay,
that's a
thank
great
you.
question. That's a great question to ask us. It's not a personal story. It's a really good question. It's just out of our lane to be able to answer.
It's no problem. I really appreciate you responding to it. I have a
Really?
CPA lined up, but if I can get it for free, why not? You know?
Yep, I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, definitely. You're doing a great job of doing your due diligence and thinking about what are the best ways to organize. And if, I don't know if you were on last week or if you missed last week, but you might also last week might also be helpful to you, the module we did then.
I'll check that out. Thank you.
And then I think we've got Carla. Raise your hand next if you want to unmute, Carla.
Yes, thank you. A great presentation. Do you have a list of attorneys that deal with these issues? You sort of mentioned it. We have had the most difficult time trying to find a real estate attorney or a farm attorney in Mississippi to help us with succession planning and deciding if we're going to set up, like put the farm in the LLC, or we do have a business for the cattle that we're raising. But just the whole idea of the land and how to look at transferring the land in the future and things like that, we've had the most difficult time finding an attorney to help us.
Okay, Carla, is it an heirs property issue?
Well, we own all the property. The property is all in our names. So all of our names are on the deed, but we're like planning for the next generation and how we wanted to transfer and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's what we need help with.
To try to figure that out, yeah. So
Yeah.
if you hold it in heirs property, the Mississippi Center for Justice, Andrea Barnes at the Mississippi Center for Justice is the one to contact in Mississippi.
Okay.
And then if it's not an heirs property, then that's a different discussion, but you can reach out to me, becky.smith@msstate.edu. And as extension, I can't direct people to certain, I can't refer, recommend, but we can say, these are folks that we have worked with, and then you can do your due diligence and do your interviewing, but certainly, Andrea Barnes she's the best. We're really fortunate to have her in Mississippi. And we had a question in the chat. What if our family has a non-active heir who is not interested in continuity, but would prefer to sell the real estate rather than farm it? And that's the same thing. So you've got this, one of the, it's I'm going to say common, but a typical problem when you're holding something in heirs property. And so you've got to figure out, you may need some mediation, like you've got to figure out a solution. And so getting a third party, an attorney, going to talk to them and figuring out what your options are. So it's going to matter where you are, what state you're in, and if the state has got the UPHPA.
Yeah, and I would say we've in Indiana at least we've dealt with this quite a bit where one, if you do have those tenants in common or owners in common there where one can kind of force a sale, a lot of times that's why we really encourage farms and landowners to have a buy-sell agreement in place, so that it is protected from that. And so you have a set cost or at least a basis for determining the price of purchasing out each individual if they do want to exit. Because if you have that non-active heir and they really just want the money from it, if you can buy them out, we've seen that be the most successful scenario if it's possible. But then again, I know there's a lot that goes into that, and there's not always the funds available. But we've seen that go on pretty well if you can. I'll read the next question in the chat. Do you have a contact or attorney in Florida that deals with heirs property?
We have the network. So if you want to email me, that's fine, or Roseanne. And the network is really just forming. So I don't know, I'm not part of it because I'm not an attorney, but we can refer. So that's the best that we can do. Lamont has a really good question. Renee, I'm interested to know if you have experience with dealing with this. How to identify fair rental rates for farmland? Background is it heirs property, it's undivided.
Yeah, so I know that at Purdue we put out an annual extension report that has cash rent rates, land rates, and also price per acre based on where the property is located and the productivity of the property. Okay, so it looks like in chat Kentucky does as well. Thank you for that, Brian. Kentucky might be closer. I don't know if Tennessee has that publication, but
Tennessee, I just did a thing for their farm management, University of Tennessee Farm Management Extension. So they have lots and lots of resources, and it's just a matter of getting to them. So Lamont, if you will email me, I can send you to Tori and David, who will be able to help you get that located.
I think somebody might have put it in chat.
Yes.
So,
Awesome.
Yes, I just put it in the chat.
There's Walter.
Thank you, Walter.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thank you.
Walter.
Yeah, that's a great resource to at least start from. So I will caution you, every land is different, every property is different. You can't just take those numbers and say, that's what I should be charging, or that's what I should be selling it for. Really think about your property reasonably and realistically and look at those numbers so you can get a ballpark estimate. Because everybody thinks they have the top rated ground, no matter if they do or not. We run into that all the time.
Great questions.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to preview what we're doing next week?